So, Dark and Darker, Steam's newest hit game that hasn't come out yet? Where do I begin with this game? It's a hardcore game, like Tarkov, Rust, Sea of Thieves, Hunt Showdown, something like that. But it's slow as all get out.
Oh, Archer.
Just come back if you need to.
He's hurt bad.
All the way. That's the only safe zone. I'm pushing.
Killed him.
Take the first left.
Killed him.
Opening door.
And terrifying.
People.
Okay, people.
Maybe I'm wrong.
If you saw movement over here, it's probably people. Oh!
Oh shit!
He's super hit.
Got him.
Beautiful.
But more than anything, it just has potential. One of the biggest reasons Hunt Showdown is my favorite PvP game is because there's a lot of room to have those conversations about the game. It's worth your time to discuss different builds and strategies and loadouts and ways of doing things more efficiently, and with the character dynamics and ways that you can utilize each character and play them differently. I feel like that's applicable here. It's fun to experiment in, and it's fun to fight in. So that's exactly what we're doing in today's video. So without further ado, welcome to my scuffed 3D paint character sheet. We're going to be talking about the difference between solo and team play. So going through the sheet, starting off talking about solo play, you have to remember that in the current state of the game, you'll always be loading into a trios match, essentially. So when you're playing solo, you're expecting to fight teams of 3 and have to attempt to break them up or not take them all head on in some fashion. Starting with the wizard. The wizard's sort of a glass cannon. You have a lot of spells, you have to manage your cooldowns and things as you do, but really you just have a lot of high damage, possible one tap or damage to the whole team type spells. Pretty good at suppressing fire, but again, glass cannon. If people are on you, you can't really do much about it, but if you can get good hits on people, you can do hella damage. And so it's for that reason that Wizard is going to be a great pick for a solo. You can hurt people, get a kill, and still keep your distance, and that's exactly what you want to be doing as a solo down in the dungeons. Next up we have Rogue. Rogue is an interesting one. In the last alpha we got to play, Rogue was very weak, but the play style is still there in full effect, and so essentially you can go completely invisible and hide. And if you get good enough at learning the map layout and you can play the other team correctly, get in their heads, Rogue can be a solid pick, especially if they buff his damage more. So essentially you're just going to go around the corner, play in a dark corner, turn all the lights off, and press your hide ability, and you can sort of instantly create a 50-50 if you're either completely invisible in a random spot in the room, maybe even in the light if you turn the corner without them seeing you, or if you're in the dark, sitting really close, ready to stab them, not even invisible, they just can't see you because it's dark. And so creating that 50-50 is a really strong thing. I'm not going to say he's the best solo character, but the play style definitely avoiding going head on into everybody does make a lot of sense, despite the fact that if they do manage to pile on you, there's not really anything you can do about it. You don't really have any way to keep distance at all. You have to still be close to people, and that can be very bad for you if you don't pick the opportune moment. So it's just a different play style, but it still works. Now Ranger, obviously being the person I played the most, my main and everything, I think definitely works well as a solo character. Not a glass cannon like Wizard, you're still gonna have to play your life, but he can still keep his distance. Even if he's getting pushed by 3 people and he hasn't put much damage in, he can still get away. He's fast, right? I mean, the Rogue is fast and he can get away, but that's not his play style. The Ranger is going to be trying to get damage from a long way away, keeping his distance and then still able to get away. If there's a Berserker pushing him, all he needs to kill is the Berserker, who takes more damage at the moment, and then he'll have his one kill to play around. Usually he can also play in Chaos, sort of like Rogue. So these are all three really great characters as a solo. Now we're gonna jump down to fighter. Now fighter is just gonna be your hack and slash, guy. He does have a play style, but it's again based around melee combat or getting up on somebody. It's like a more sustainable barbarian for the most part. And so in solo play, I don't think this is your best option. So I'm gonna give him an X. But that being said, this is probably the best of the X'd out characters. And it's funny how these are layered. You'll see. But basically, there's no reason that you should be running the fighter when you're solo, when your entire build revolves around pushing into their entire team. It just doesn't make any sense, especially if they have any of these characters on the top in a bigger team. That being said, I'm going to say now that the fighter is definitely probably a better pick in a solo situation than the cleric or barbarian. Barbarian having an asterisk on that, but we'll get to that. Now let's go to cleric. Cleric is obviously one of the strongest classes in the game, if not the best class in the game, and he's useless almost as a solo. You can put a lot of heals on yourself, and your spells do turn back on yourself, get a lot of protection in there. I'm sure we're going to see solo people putting protection spells in themselves, getting some hits, immediately healing themselves with a spell, getting more hits, and just playing a huge tank as cleric. And it's possible, but again, it's not a situation you want to be in, especially when you have to cast a spell not against a wall and not on the enemies. If they all crowd around you, that just even healing yourself becomes a problem. And again, so for that reason, solo is just not something you want to be doing with the cleric. Barb, on the other hand, is a weird one, okay? And my decision on Barb may hopefully be the only controversial one here. But Barb can play like these top three, maybe even play like Rogue in some capacity, because you can get hits and get out. You're faster than anyone, right? So Barb's ability allows him to have hella speed. He does a bunch of damage, and he has debuffs on other people. It depends on how you play him. Like I've said at the beginning of the video, you can make different builds and playstyles with all these characters. But really the thing that brings the Barb down is that when he does a lot of damage, he takes a lot of damage in a similar way to Wizard. The difference is Wizard spells can be cast from afar. So the whole thing with Wizard is that you're a glass cannon. Barb is a glass cannon too, but you have to be in their face. And I don't care who you're getting in the face of, that's not a good thing when you're in the face of more than one person as a solo. It's not helpful. Despite that, if you play your cards really well, you can get a huge hit on his Barb, maybe one-tap somebody, and then, play around another team and act like they're your teammates kind of thing. Use them to your advantage, get away because people can't chase you, hope you dodge or they don't have an archer, or plan around that. But again, it'd just be way harder than the top three. And so, in a weird way, as even though it's possible, I just don't see any reason you'd want to be running Barb as a solo. And so it's a team game, but I know people are going to be playing solos out here. And so the interesting thing we see here is that the characters that deal with territory and suppressive fire and maybe more positioning the enemy team based stuff are the people you're going to want to be playing in solo, that you can actually have a chance to dip and dive in and out of fights, whereas the characters that are more upfront, frontline fighters, even though that's not cleric at all, but support or anything more focused on the team relations or the longevity, the betterment of your team as a whole, aren't really going to work at all. These things that help you have a huge scare factor as barbarian, have huge heals and protection on everybody as cleric, have a large health pool to divvy up and help utilize and tank for the rest of your team, is just not going to be something that's the most beneficial to you playing solo. You're going to have a harder time doing it. That being said, I think this game is designed well enough, even in its current state, that all the characters here are possible to play as a solo. Okay, on to team comps. So obviously these checks and X's are not going to work the same way for solos as they do for team comps, but I think the solo talk was a good way to introduce everyone to the way these characters work and maybe some of the play styles you'd expect from these characters, and a visual of kind of what you expect them to be doing in a dungeon. But basically what we're going to be talking about here is popular team strategies that I've seen, that I have come up with, that I would recommend if you're trying to do well down in the dungeon. So first off, we're talking about this recent, just the end of 2022 alpha test right now. So things are probably likely to change. Like I said before, we're expecting a rogue buff and maybe some changes to the way the end game of the map works right now, because the way the zone doesn't tick up in damage or give you time to escape, it just insta kills you once it closes, is dumb. You used to have a triple portal, maybe that's due to come back. But anyways, so team comps. Off the bat, for right now, the way things are, I'm going to put a huge check mark on Cleric, just because Cleric is absolutely broken. If you have a wizard or a ranger or maybe even a rogue to make distance, to make space for the Cleric to stay behind and be safe, unless he gets flanked by another team, or a flank that's pretty easy to see coming, hopefully, especially if you have a ranger with traps, that becomes almost impossible. A rogue can do it, but still, if you have a Cleric on your team, you're better off. You just have to have them. They put protection on you that lets you tank hits from even a barbarian as a wizard. Do you know what I mean? The protection's insane. You can tank way more damage. You can shield pot on top of the protection, and then as soon as you take a hit, he can heal you. There's nothing to be said about it. And so talking about the team comp that I ran the most, we had 2 rangers playing modern combat tactics like a battlefield game, watching each other's angles, playing down the sides of the walls, clearing rooms. And so we have 2 rangers playing a slow tactical shooter is the setup, and then you have a Cleric behind, and they make so much space, both being rangers and just holding people and bear trapping and not letting people walk through without getting 6 triple shot arrows directly into them as soon as they step out. The Cleric is so safe, and if it comes down to it, we have a rogue on our Cleric. I have a clip where Air literally just pushed the guy and died for our Cleric, while I let the Cleric, I opened a door for the Cleric, not even a physical door, but like I literally swung out with my positioning, let the Cleric through so he could heal, and then be on me to make sure we could kill anybody else that showed up. And so just keeping the Cleric alive and getting all that heals and protection from him is insane. Me and Eric could wipe teams as duo rangers playing those combat tactics, but with the Cleric behind us, it's almost unstoppable. It's probably the strongest setup in the game right now. And so rangers creating that space, even just having them on a team with fighters or barbarians, makes them kind of a must-have for a team comp. So Cleric and Ranger are kind of broken right now. Now, I'm not going to put X's on everybody else, and I don't think everybody else is garbage at all. Again, Rogue, is in a weird spot for team strategies, especially if you're playing something like this. But the great thing about Rogue is that he combos really well with himself or anybody else that even wants to play like him. So one of the best strategies that I've seen for Rogue is we had this team that were playing 3 rogues. They sat in the middle of the map and they were just all hidden. They can go invisible. They don't even turn the lights off so that you don't suspect anything. As soon as you get to their corridor, one of them closes the door behind you, which is something that I've added. I don't think they actually did it in the clip I have, but you have 3 rogues and they all just dogpile on you. If you have one of them close the door behind you and then dogpile on you, their team can't get to them fast enough before they're dead. 3 rogues on top of you is just not something you're going to survive. And so they can just absolutely eat somebody down and then hold that position till the end of time. It's not the most rewarding strategy, as the other team literally might not come in at all, because what are you going to do? Push into the rogues? You can't see them. You can turn the lights out after you get the kill. There's not much the other team can do besides maybe throw fire lanterns down there or something, or just keep spraying the room and hoping they hit you. And so if your rogues are hidden well enough, you get the one body and you just play around it. Maybe you get the other team killed by that and then push you third party the fight that you started. It can be a strong strategy. And I think it has a high success rate of getting out, because nobody's going to be able to push you without dying. And if you shut the door on the first person, you'll get 1 kill every time. And so if you set it up correctly, maybe find a way to bring in bear traps if that's a thing, it can be a really strong strategy. The wizard can hinder a team comp, because if you're playing melee characters, the wizard's not going to be able to get shots in without hurting his teammates. If you're playing ranged characters, then the wizard is good but also a glass cannon. And if you're playing 2 rangers, you'd rather have a cleric than a wizard, but the rangers can at least tank a few hits where the wizard can't because he's such a glass cannon. That being said, if you are in sync with your wizard enough, having him make their entire team low with a chain lightning or a fireball or something like that, and buffing your damage by putting fire on you and playing a little bit more like a cleric, being ready to finish the fight with, some extra spells at the end, or maybe having 2 of your teammates with melee classes like a fighter or a barbarian or even a cleric push one side while the wizard just absolutely spells the other side. If you can split their team, it can be a strong thing, but it's not guaranteed that the wizard's going to be useful or be able to use his spells without being a detriment in a team comp, and so that can hurt him sometimes. But again, that amount of damage, if you play around it and give him the room to put it out on the other team, can be absolutely devastating. So wizards in like a weird, you have to be really careful in a team comp. Again, fighter I talked about earlier, but he's going to have a huge health pool. He's sort of going to be your tank because his entire thing is just blocking shots and being ready to take hits and sit there and have a way to block more shots while he gets his heals off or gets heals from cleric. Cleric has a shield, but he's the one with the heals, and so you can make a whole giant tank build with just fighters and clerics however you want to do that, and there's nothing that can really hurt you if you play correctly. Again, eventually you're going to get pushed, eventually you're going to get hit, but it is a nice cycle if you're playing your doors and giving up and taking space properly. It's just a positioning game with every character. Barbarian can be really fun on a team comp, especially with rogues. Like I was talking about earlier, if you hide somewhere with the barbarian with the rogues, it's kind of the same thing. You just instantly jump somebody and put in a lot of damage. And so that's Barbarian's whole thing. The scary part about Barbarian is that if people are able to take a few steps backwards, it can be the end of the world for you as a Barbarian, because you're going to take a lot of damage. And so, when you pop your ability to be able to run really fast and do a lot of damage, you're taking a lot of damage. And if it's a ranger or even just somebody with a shield that can block a hit first to give their team some room to be able to hurt you, you're going to be out there in the open, pushed up in front of your team, taking all of the damage with pretty much no cover. And again, rangers excluded, wizards excluded, cover is still important. Having a door to close to get a heal off is still really important, even in a melee fight. You don't have a shield with you, so really you're just in a kind of a scary spot as a barbarian for that. But if you get people in a tight hallway, if you one-tap somebody or put in a huge hit and then manage to just dip out another door, it can be really nice. But you kind of have to play barbarian like a rogue in a weird way because of that extra damage. Again, going to a team strat here, the best team strat I have to give for a barbarian is barbarians with a wizard or a ranger. And so what you do really with the wizard is you're going to have the wizard on a flank like they want to be. Somebody else holding down main, so maybe a cleric that's good with a shield, has a strong melee weapon, can put on some heals or stuff. Maybe even you have a fighter up front that has his own heals who's playing the front line, right? Your berserker is going to play with the fighter like a duo and kind of swing in and out of the fighter like he's a door, right? And the fighter just holds a line. And the wizard, his job is to go on a flank route. And the cool thing is the fighter can stay and the barbarian can flank with the wizard to, I shouldn't say you can decide to flank that way, but if the wizard needs help because he's a glass cannon, the barbarian can get there in time and fold out a door for the wizard, possibly. But again, the wizard being a glass cannon, the wizard can go on a rotate, and so the whole thing is that the fighter's not trying to get kills, he anchors, the cleric's not trying to get kills, he anchors, and then the barbarian swings in and out of him and scares them. If he kills them, great, but he scares them. Once he scares them, he's going to scare them into the flanking wizard. And so if you can get on both sides of them, the strongest pincer maneuver in the game is having a terrifying barbarian and then stepping back into a giant glass cannon that shreds your whole team from the back. I mean, what are you going to do about it? You didn't know he was there, and now your whole team's dead or on 1 health, and you have a fighter and a barbarian as a duo pushing into you while the wizard just has to stay alive. There's not much counterplay to it, and so it can be really strong, but it's really hard to set up. And so that's most of the team strategies right now. Obviously, you can play a bunch of different combinations of these characters, triple up on any of them, and play crazy weird strategies, put on different abilities. Again, just like some of the best PvP games out there, there are builds to make. You could put thousands of hours in this game and still come up with new ideas, new builds, new strategies, new ways of besting your opponent. And so I think it has potential. It's pretty bare bones right now, but this is what we have going on, and I'm curious to see what they do with these characters in the future. But before that, I hope we get some map fixes, especially for the way the end of the match works with the zones and portals right now, because insta kill does not feel good. But there you go.